the ever-interesting skill-based matchmaking conversation. I feel like this is one of the many discussions that we as a scene pretty much have yearly, right? It's kind of on target with the players union, with the rank system, GAs. Again, this is something that we talk about every single year, and I've actually kind of gone more in depth this season. I feel like it's only right. We're in franchising. We're heading into year 2. And I kind of want to talk on, which I know that franchising doesn't have everything to do with this, but just in general, I wanted to kind of dive in more deep with this. And essentially the way that this conversation was brought up this year was during the Cold War Alpha. Skill-based matchmaking was done in the lobbies. There were many players who were kind of seen reverse boosting, which essentially means that you're just trying to basically make your stats worse. And so that was made known public on a few different streams, and that was it pretty much caused a major uproar among fans about this. Now, when we talk about skill-based matchmaking, I know that people are going to be under the impression that due to this show being kind of about Call of Duty esports, that I'm going to be of a particular opinion, right? That I'm going to be of the opinion that skill-based matchmaking has no right ever to be in Call of Duty, that rank should be the only way that we highlight players, should be the only way that we essentially rank players or have skill-based matchmaking in any case. I will tell you right now that is not the way that I think about this, because I personally see both angles, right? I really see the side of Activision Blizzard specifically, because odds are if you're watching this, you are most likely, and I'm not trying to assume, but most likely there's a very high percentage of the community that believes that skill-based matchmaking has no belonging whatsoever when we talk about public lobbies. I will say that despite my open-mindedness, right, when we talk about both sides, I do hold a lot of weight into the competitive side. Why? It's something that I'm involved with every single day. I'm not going to act and sit here as if I wouldn't want it to be gone, right? Because it is something that I think needs to have some more attention around it. As someone who kind of considers myself to be better than the average Call of Duty player, I am someone who would rather not have to worry about skill-based matchmaking, not having to play against players who are at my caliber every single game that I play. And odds are, much like you who are watching this, you most likely want it gone as well, because it tends to be people that are kind of interested in the competitive scene tend to play Call of Duty at a higher level. It's something that you have an interest in, and it's most likely because of the way that you play Call of Duty. You've most likely played it for at least a few seasons. Not to say that people who watch this show don't play Call of Duty, because there are a fair amount that do as well, but you kind of get my point, right? So at the very least, I want the Call of Duty world or the scene to realize something. And I'm not saying that you have to like it. I'm just saying that you have to realize it. And that is, Call of Duty every year is made for the casual gamer, right? It is made for the casual video game player that happens to stumble upon Call of Duty and say, wow, I want to play this, right? I realize personally that Call of Duty is one of the most popular video game franchises of all time. I realize that in the last decade, it holds 10 out of the 15 spots for the most popular video games of the decade, right? And knowing that, I also know the esport, right? You have to realize the system that Call of Duty utilizes. You have to understand why Call of Duty has been successful for such a long time and is recognized kind of in this billion-dollar cycle that odds are isn't going to change, right? You have to understand the system that they have in place and the way that things have worked for such a long time. And that system is to be a video game that the casual fan can enjoy each and every year. It holds a mechanic that is addicting, that is fun, that is exciting, right? That's the reason why you most likely play Call of Duty. The reason why you can walk down the street and pretty much ask nearly anybody and say, hey, have you heard of Call of Duty? They will be able to say yes. There's a very large majority of people that if you were to walk down the street randomly and ask and say, hey, have you played Call of Duty, or at least have you heard of the name? They're going to say yes. Now, there are many ways, right, that Call of Duty adapts to the average player. There's a reason why they're on, like I said, there's a reason why they are in 10 out of the 15 spots for the most popular video games of the decade. There's a reason for that. And one of those ways, and the reason why it is fun for the average video game player to play Call of Duty every year, one of those mechanisms is skill-based matchmaking, right? They want, a majority of the time, they want the average fan to enjoy their time, right? They want them to enjoy the core mechanic of the game to keep them coming back. Again, you don't have to like that. I'm not sitting here and acting as if this is something that I am all for, but I'm saying you have to understand the reason for why that it's in place and the reason why it's effective, because it's clear that it is effective, right? Think about it. And from an average player's perspective, think about this. Let's say that you booted up 2 video games, right? Let's say that you don't know anything about either game's history. You just bought them because they look like they'd be fun. You load up both multiplayer playlists on each game. You load up the first game, hey, you're hanging in there, right? You're getting kills, it's a close game. You maybe even go even, possibly a little bit above even, maybe just below. And then you load up the second game and you're going highly negative, right? You're playing against top players who are way better than you, and you end up losing the game, no question about it. Let's say it's Call of Duty and you get spawn trapped, right? One of the worst things that could possibly happen to especially a new gamer. Which one of those 2 games are you more prone to come back to? Odds say that you're going to go back to the game where you saw success, because that success that you had was fun and you want to experience that same fun again, right? Now, I realize that somebody could go out there and say, well, that player in this example may be drawn to the game where they got destroyed because they want to get better. I don't disagree with that, right? But I'd say that in terms of comparing the 2, a majority of people are going to gravitate to the game that they saw more success in. It was going to be in that first example, where at the very least, they were having positive moments. And I realize that it's not necessarily always that drastic, but you kind of get my point here. The average person enjoys Call of Duty for the core mechanic, right? The more you do it, the more you enjoy it. It's been called an arcade shooter for the longest time because it's essentially what it is at its very core. When we talk about multiplayer, kind of pub lobbies, that is the core mechanic behind it. I just want you to kind of get in the same page with me and kind of get where I'm coming from on this, because it's very important. And as much as I would like to have skill-based matchmaking taken out for me personally or for competitive sake, I realize the reason for why it exists. And I hope that you do too now, right? I realize that the video game franchise that I love has a system that keeps them on top of titles each and every year. And they have a number of different mechanics that kind of get funded into the game, and that's the reason why they're still around today. Now, the reason why I went through all of this is because I want us to be on the same page when I bring up what is my personal recommendation, and at least to understand what skill-based matchmaking actually is there for. Because I want to bring in a system that I'm proposing that I believe has the ability to possibly help still utilize skill-based matchmaking because it helps the average player, while also giving someone who enjoys playing Call of Duty every year a way that doesn't always make them have to play against players who are at the same level as them. So this is my proposal. The way that you help tend to both is by utilizing both. I think the average Call of Duty player, when they load up a game, gets put into a system. Now, this system would put them into one skill-based matchmaking lobby for every 5 lobbies that they get put into. And obviously that can be changed up, right? You could say 5, you could say 10. The reason why I say 5 or 10 and don't give exact figures because I don't know the stats like Activision does. Obviously they have tons of figures that they go off of, tons of stats that allow them to fine-tune something like this. But just for this example, we'll say just 1 out of every 5 games that they play, one of those is a skill-based matchmaking. Now, the player isn't aware of this system, right? In this example, in this system that I'm bringing up, the player isn't aware that this exists, especially the average player who is not going to even know anything that even skill-based matchmaking is a thing. And they shouldn't be made aware of it either, because you're able to get that player's skill, if you will, for skill-based matchmaking through the lobbies that they play in. So the biggest question whenever you probably first played Cold War, if you haven't already, but for those that did, you probably had in your first few lobbies somewhat of an easy time, right? Maybe you're slaying pretty well, and then progressively as the alpha went along, you started to face off against more difficult players. When we talk about this system specifically, whenever you're playing in the lobbies that don't include skill-based matchmaking, that is the way for they can kind of start to earn your rank and realize where exactly you stand in that 1 out of 5 lobbies. Again, that's an example. Now, one aspect that I instantly thought of was, well, what if players rage quit, right? What if they realize that their lobby is actually difficult? And that's the thing too, where if you are having them play in random lobbies, you never really know where exactly the skill-based matchmaking one is going to come through. Now, if you are a very, very top tier player, it may be easier to realize. But if you're kind of more in the kind of maybe slightly above average to average player, it's probably not going to be realized. But I think that if you are going to see players start to rage quit because they think they're in one of these lobbies, if this is something that is made known public, I think you have the ability to most likely kind of realize whenever they are rage quitting, you can kind of reset that, make sure that that game that they kind of quit out of only kind of continues back into the cycle again. So again, that can possibly change around in a certain way, but I think 1 out of 5 seems fair. I think the rage quitting thing is possible, but you kind of get my point there. As much as people hate skill-based matchmaking, I think that there are benefits to it, right? And you have to think about it too. In this system that I possibly came up with, skill-based matchmaking, I think actually has the ability to work in a positive light. I think skill-based matchmaking can be beneficial for the average player and even for the top player as well when we talk about some of these lobbies. Now, the reason why there needs to be a touch of it, the reason why it does need to exist in some way in this example is not only because you want to mesh the two together, because I believe that there is some reason why skill-based matchmaking still exists, but also is because, I'll say this, have you ever played a video game against somebody who didn't know what they were doing, right? At first, it's a blast, right? But I'll say this, as time kind of goes on, you find yourself kind of messing with them. It's not really, it eventually doesn't become fun anymore, right? The fun is taken away because there is no challenge. There needs to be a hint of adversity in some way or another, right? Because when you're playing, like I said, when you're playing against somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, it is fun at first, but it starts to kind of deplete over time because you realize there is no struggle here, right? The victory that I'm getting, the kill that I'm earning, I don't feel like I'm earning it. And at the same time, there also needs to be a hint of reward for players who are just starting out as well. By having a random lobby, they run the chance of possibly doing well, mixed in with the skill-based matchmaking one that can allow for them to play in a lobby that keeps them coming back. The same way can also work for players who are maybe of a higher skill level. They can play against random players. Odds are, let's say that they're a top-tier player. One of those lobbies is a skill-based matchmaking one that they're not aware of. It keeps them coming back, while also at the same time allowing for a majority of the lobbies to still be fun and somewhat relaxing, which is what a lot of people have been using as of recent. Like I said, I see both sides to this, and I think it's important to understand the benefits of skill-based matchmaking because many people, especially in esports, instantly associate that term with something negative, right? Because it's not awarding players that grind the game and play it competitively. So I understand that. But at the same time, we also do have to understand the way that the game works, the way the franchise works, and to try to adjust and tend to both the casual and the hardcore fan base. Because you started off, if you are a Call of Duty player, you started off as one of these players. I started off as one of these players, right? You started off playing in a lobby that you weren't comfortable with, and it is important to realize that the more fans that Call of Duty earns, the better the esport ends up turning out. It is really a matter of meshing the both rather than just forcing one upon the other. And I understand that the mesh that we possibly could have and how maybe at times it can be one way versus another. And I understand that it isn't fun to deal with skill-based matchmaking, but the way that I'm proposing what I am is because I think the system has the ability to take elements from skill-based matchmaking to also kind of mesh with the competitive side, which I feel like at the end of the day is the best system possible. Now, again, it may not be perfect. It may not be the best possible one that could come about, but this was the most fair way that I could possibly see skill-based matchmaking along with kind of regular lobbies be able to mesh well. Again, my opinion, I think the skill-based matchmaking elements of it are good. I would like to see something possibly changed up with it. Again, I understand the rank system conversation, but I think when we talk about Call of Duty as a franchise, when we talk about it at a game, it is important to understand the benefits of it.